Hello and welcome back. This is Jennifer McGuire. I'm sorry I haven't had many videos lately, but our family takes some time together at the beginning of August every year, and I'm now getting back into the swing of things. So today I'm sharing with you 8 creative ways to use small dies. Sometimes we have a larger die set that come with little extra dies, or we just have a set that has lots of little dies. Well, today we're looking at different ways to use them creatively, and I have 8 ideas for you and lots of cards. Let's get started with this example where we form small die cuts into a wreath. I have some helpful tips for you. Now, I went through my Spellbinders dies because they have really well-designed small dies. So I have several die sets here with small dies, but look through what you have. A lot of your die sets will have tiny little extra dies that you can use for this. For this card, I'm using the Spellbinders Christmas Blooms die set. You can see there are lots of little leaves and holiday flowers. There's a pine cone. Well, I decided to use that along with some blues, some kind of teal colors here. Now I'm using Spellbinders cardstock today, and you can see the color names I chose there. I love the Spellbinders cardstock line. I've talked about it in videos before. And here I'm just taking out pieces of each of the colors. When I get a new pack of cardstock, I put them in the sleeves like this. I'll link to those sleeves below. And I also go ahead and cut one sheet so there's smaller pieces in there so I can quickly grab them when I'm doing any kind of small die cutting. I can also keep my scraps in there too. I also grabbed a piece of Simon Says Stamp silver glitter cardstock. I thought that would be fun for small little accents. So I'm using those small dies, and I'm going to die cut a bunch of pieces. I think it's best to die cut a bunch at first, then start arranging, as opposed to trying to die cut as you go. It really makes the process much longer. And check this out, if you cut your pieces small enough, you can die cut a lot at once, which is a huge time saver. This is the Spellbinders Platinum 6, which is a great die cutting machine, and it'll cut these different cardstocks beautifully. I keep my little die cuts in a tray so that they don't get thrown all over my desk and they stay organized. So I continue to die cut a bunch of these little flowers and leaves, and now it's time to form a wreath. Now here's a fun way to form a wreath, and this is my first idea for using those small dies. I take something circular. Here I just have a circle die, and I'm going to trace it onto some white cardstock. This happens to be 4 by 5¼ inches. So I just traced a circle up there towards the top center of the cardstock panel. That will be my guide to form a circular wreath. Now before we start gluing on, I thought it'd be fun to use a plaid embossing folder on this background. So I'll put the cardstock into the embossing folder and then run it through my die cut machine here. I did use a little shim there, a metal shim, just to give a little more pressure. That is totally up to you and your machine. So there you can see the beautiful plaid background. Okay, so now we're going to form a wreath. I'm using Bearly Art Glue because it has a precision tip, and I'm using tiny little die cuts. Now the first step in forming a wreath is to use some of your longer die cuts like this to kind of form the circle. I'm just trying to follow the pencil circle that we have there. It doesn't have to line up great at all. You just want roughly that area. Now, while my die cut machine was running there to cut another dark blue leaf piece, I just went ahead and glued a gray one down here. I'll talk about that in a moment. Okay, so now let's finish off that circle up there, or at least close to it. Now, that is kind of like our base to our wreath. Now we can start adding some fillers into this. So I am adding some of these gray little sprigs here, and I'm having them point in the opposite direction of what we did before. So they're right on top of the others, and notice that they're going across the areas where the other die cuts met. So where those 2 blue die cuts met, I'm putting this on top. And that helps to make it form more into a circle instead of that kind of blocky look that we had. So I'm just gluing these right on top. You don't need a whole lot of glue, just a little bit is all you need. Okay, so that was like our base. Now we're adding more fillers. So I'm putting clusters of 2 or 3 little holly leaves here, and I'm pointing them in a different direction too. And I'll do 3 of these clusters in 3 different areas on our wreath. So you can see how it's kind of creating a little triangle effect here with the 3 clusters of these leaves. Then I decided I had only done 2 in each of those clusters. I decided to give another leaf to each of those clusters just to make them bigger. I like my wreaths very full and filled with die cuts. You could do less if you prefer. Next, I'm going to create a cluster of 3 different leaves in between the other ones we've already glued down. Now, I plant pots outside every summer. That's my hobby. And I always look for pillars, fillers, and spillers. So the fillers are like what really fills out a pot and just kind of grows kind of up and around. The pillars shoot up high. So those grow really high. And that's kind of what we're doing here. We did the pillars already, or the fillers already, which forms the wreath. These are just layers building it up. So these are the pillars. And soon we'll do the spillers, which kind of stick outside of the wreath. So it's the same thing with my pots. Pillars, which stick high, fillers, which go full, and spillers that pour over the edge. We're doing fillers, pillars, and spillers with our wreath. And that's just an easy way to think of it. So now I have these light blue leaves. I'm just cutting them smaller and tucking those out here and there, filling in those areas. So you just continue to add these, and notice how I kind of have them angled into the wreath or out of the wreath, depending on the shaping that I have in that area. If my wreath is looking a little oblong, I kind of fill in the space towards the center there. Next, I'm adding in those spillers, the ones that kind of stick out from the main part of the wreath. Now, this little die is included in that set, and I just die cut the little silver glitter dots to go at the end, the little berries, all included in that die set. And I'm gluing those to kind of stick out here and there. Those are those spillers. They kind of spill out of the wreath. And it just gives it a little more character and keeps it from looking absolutely perfectly round. Okay, so now that we have our main pillars, fillers, and spillers in there, we can do our decorating. I die cut some of the little poinsettia flowers from a light peach, and I'm gluing those around. I did 1 large flower on the bottom right, and I'm putting about 5 little pink ones here and there around the wreath. And then I have these little blue flowers that were included in the die set too that I hadn't used yet, and I'm using those kind of as fillers. Anywhere the wreath looks a little narrow or a little weak, I kind of stick one of those in too. So here you can see me adding little bits and pieces here just to fill it out. So really the key to creating a wreath is starting with that base. Those are the fillers. Then adding dimension up, which is the pillars, and then making things kind of stick out a bit, and those are the spillers. So I always found that very helpful in creating wreaths on my cards, and I hope it helps you too. So I used a bunch of tiny die cuts to create this. It took me about a half hour to put this together, and if you ask me, that's fast for a card. At least for me it is. Okay, so now we can finish this off by adding some Spellbinders Crystal Mix Essential Gems to the center of the poinsettia flowers. These are self-adhesive. I don't trust self-adhesive gems for some reason. I think these will stay just fine, but I still put liquid adhesive under them. These are great because they have super tiny ones and bigger ones in the set, and this set has like a white iridescent and a silver iridescent. Okay, now we just need a sentiment to add to this. Instead of stamping or die cutting a sentiment, I thought I would hot foil one. So I'm using my Spellbinders Glimmer Machine, and I'm using the Spellbinders Yana's Tiny Sentiments hot foil plates. Now I'm going to do this pretty quickly today because I've gone over the Glimmer Machine in previous videos. I will link to a more thorough video on the Glimmer Machine up here on the top right. So I have a few of the different sentiments here, and I taped them together, and now I'm taking a Spellbinders Glimmer foil piece, and I'm putting it underneath, so sliding it underneath all of those hot foil plates. I only need 1 sentiment for this card, but I might as well foil multiple sentiments and save them for other cards. Okay, so now I have my Glimmer Machine, and I have let it warm up. It says that it's ready. And I just lay that with the plates down onto the hot portion of the Glimmer Machine. And then I put the 2 shims and a cardstock shim on top. This is a really easy machine to use. Again, you can check out that other video if it's new to you. So you push the button, and once it says it's ready, the timer will stop blinking. You take all the plates out of your Glimmer Machine, and you feed it through your Platinum 6 die cut machine. So the Glimmer Machine gave the heat. This will give the pressure to cause that foil to stay on the cardstock. and we'll have some wonderfully beautiful foil sentiments that we can add to cards. Okay, so I just peeled that off, and there you go, all those beautiful sentiments. Now you could use a die to cut these out, but here's a trick for you. Take a piece of cardstock and put it right up against the blade of your trimmer. Then tuck your little sentiment underneath it until you see it lined up where you want it to cut, just right next to the sentiment. And you cut right there. Now we just need to square off the end, so I'm going to cut at the end of the sentiment and at the beginning. Again, there are many ways to do this. This is what I find to be easiest. Now I take that big piece of cardstock again, put it right up against the blade of the trimmer, tuck this underneath, line up the other side of the sentiment where I want it to cut, just looking right at the edge of the pink cardstock, cut it, and there we have our sentiment cut nicely. So I want some dimension behind this, so I have additional scraps or little strips of the same color of cardstock that I'm gluing behind it, and then I'll glue that right along the large poinsettia that we added on the bottom right corner of our wreath. So let's look at the completed card. I did add the panel to a top folding 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch note card. Here's a closer look at the wreath. You can see all the dimension in it. Now keep in mind, you could do the same technique, but maybe do a square to create a frame, or maybe a line to create a border. This is a great way to use up and mix and match lots of little die cuts together. If you've never tried something like this, I encourage you to do so. It's really fun and therapeutic to just sit there and arrange them, and you really can't go wrong. By the way, I like to run my fingers over the completed wreath, and if any pieces seem a little loose, I just put a little bit of adhesive underneath them, and then I can be sure they'll stay. Now, another fun way to use your tiny die cuts is to embellish the inside of cards too. So that's the second idea. Check it out. I use some of my extra die cuts just to do a little decorating in the corner. Now you can do more or less than this. If I decorate the inside, make it pretty minimal so the focus is on the personal message in the inside. But that's another way to use small die cuts. Now, before I move on to the next one, I thought it'd be fun to use that plaid embossing folder on the flap of my envelope. All you have to do is put the flap right into the folder, run it through your die cut machine like you would if you were embossing cardstock, and look at that. Now it matches my card perfectly. So I just wanted to share that too. Great way to use your embossing folders to make your envelope special. Okay, let's move on to our next card. This one actually shares 2 ideas for using your tiny die cuts. One is to make an impression for a background, and the other is to cluster them in the shape of a heart or a circle or some larger shape. Now for this, I'm using a couple different sets of dies. First, we have the Spellbinders Autumn Leaves etched dies, which are over on the left. Then over on the right, we have the Spellbinders Mini Fall Blooms etched die set. These go together really nicely, and the set on the right has a little acorn too. I'm also using a small flower die set that I've used many times in videos, one of my favorites this year. It's the Spellbinders Mini Blooms and Sprigs. Then over there on the right, I also have the newer Spellbinders Petite Floral Potpourri dies. So I'm using a few different small flowers from each of those. Just dig through what you have. Okay, let's get started with that background. I'm going to use some small dies to make an impression on cardstock. Now, doing an impression with dies is easy on pretty much any machine. You just need to follow the instructions. On the Spellbinders, there's an embossing mat, which has lots of give to it, and you put that on your main platform. On top of that, I'm putting a piece of cardstock, just white cardstock, and I'm laying a bunch of small dies close together. So this is our third idea for using small dies, and that's to make an impression. So I'm arranging them close together, trying to fill in as best as I can. I will trim this piece down, so I'm not real worried about the outside edge, but more the center area. So I have a mix of leaves and flowers there from the die sets I just showed you. Once I'm ready, I take the embossing plate and put that on top and run it back and forth. So because we are using that tan embossing mat underneath, these dies will make an impression instead of cutting, and that gives you a whole new way to use your dies. I especially like using small dies to do this because look at that background, lots of different images impressed into it. Gives a beautiful look like embossing folder, but I'm just using my dies. Okay, now for the clustered heart on the front, I chose these colors of cardstock from Spellbinders. That wild cherry color is beautiful, and so is the beeswax yellow. So I want to form all of my little die cuts into a shape. And this is my fourth idea for small die cuts. So I found this heart die. I don't know where it's from. It was in my drawer. It's one of those missing in action dies that I have no idea where I got it. Well, I am just taping that on to my embossed background. And I'm using that as a guide. And I'm filling in that heart shape area. And I'm going as close to the outside edge as possible. I recommend starting at the nooks and crannies. So at the top of the heart there where there's a point, and at the bottom of the heart where there's a point. So if you're doing maybe a square window, you want to do the 4 corners first. So I start in those nooks and crannies, and then I just start to fill in and out to get the whole flower or the whole heart covered. So again, this is just a die cut there, being taped there as a guide. You could also just trace a shape on there with a pencil, but then you have to try to erase it after, and that can be a pain. But this is a great way to form all of those little die cuts into a heart shape. So you can see why the teeniest, tiniest die cuts are helpful here, because they allow you to get into those tight spaces. Now, I put my die cuts really close together because I love that look. You can space them out a bit more, and you'll still get the shape of the heart. Totally up to you. You can also space your die cuts apart a little bit more and put little gems in the open spaces to fill it out. It's whatever you want to do. I find this very therapeutic, and I was able to die cut a bunch of flowers and do them all at once. So I continued until I filled up the whole heart-shaped area. Then I removed the die and checked that out. I just think that is such a fun look and a great way to use small die cuts. I thought it'd be fun to also make some of them doubled or tripled. So some of them I just left 1 die cut thick, but others I glued another one on top so it was 2 die cuts thick. And then a few I did 3 die cuts thick. So it had a variation in the depth, which I think adds a lot of interest to it. Then I added the little yellow die cut circles that I created with one of the die sets to the center of the larger flowers. Okay, so now we need a sentiment, and I want to keep this really simple because I want the focus to be on the background and on the heart. So I chose a sentiment from a Spellbinders hot foil plate, and we're doing the glimmer again. So I chose a few sentiments so I could have extras, tape them together on white cardstock. I'll flip it up, slide some foil underneath it. This is the glimmer foil, and ran that through my glimmer machine like I showed you earlier. And then I just glued one of those sentiments right to the center of the heart. Now for some of the smaller flowers, I didn't want to try to find a tiny little gem. So I'm just putting a little white dot in the center of those flowers with an Arteza white gel pen. I really like these Arteza white gel pens. I find they are the best of the white gel pens I've used in a long time. And that little white dot really makes those small flowers pop too. So here's a completed card. I trimmed the background down to be 3 3/4 by 5 inches. And I put it on a top folding note card that's 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. And that's the light gray cardstock from Spellbinders. Check out all of that texture in the background thanks to that impression we made with all those small dies. And that fun cluster of flowers that forms a heart. This was really fun to make. You could use small little heart die cuts. You could do little stars. You could do little dots. Anything you want, and a great way to get more from those tiny dies. And what's funny is my friend Christina Warner just did a live video showing how to use small stamps to form a shape like this. So she formed a heart from small stamps. So I encourage you to check that out. Great minds think alike, and it's just another way to use up those small supplies. Okay, next we're going to create 2 cards at once using the same products, but a different background look using smaller dies. For this, I'm using lots of Spellbinders cardstock again. The colors are just beautiful. It's nice and heavyweight, and I thought these would be great for fall. Okay, so I wanted to share with you a trick that I do when I'm die cutting a bunch of die cuts at once. I lay them all on a piece of cardstock like this close together because I want to cut all of those. Then I take a piece of masking paper. This is from Altenew, and I lay it right on top of the back of the dies. Then I take this and run it through my die cut machine like I normally do. And what this does is it holds all those dies in the same place. So now I can peel this off, take those die cuts out. Then I can move that masking paper sheet and all of the dies still attached to it onto another piece of cardstock. So I had already cut all my cardstock pieces to 4¼ by 5½ inches. So I was able to cut a bunch of pieces this way. And look at all those leaves that I was able to cut in one passing. This is a huge time saver. Instead of fiddling with each of those die cuts and getting them positioned onto the cardstock to run through each time. So try the trick of putting masking paper on the back, or even just some masking tape would work for this too. So I continued to do this with a bunch of different colors of cardstock here, and I have them all in a tray. Now, I like dimension with my die cuts, as you know, so I glued together 3 of each of the leaves of the same color. So here I have 3 light green leaves, and I'm just gluing them on top of each other for dimension. You could skip this if you want to. It takes a bit of time to do, but I just like that stacked look. Just remember, you can skip the layering if you want. So I did that with all of my leaves, and now I have a tray of leaves that are all nice and thick because they're 3 glued together. Okay, let's get started with our backgrounds. I have 2 backgrounds here. The first I stamped with the Simon Says Stamp Friendship Text Stamp, and these are both like a craft cardstock. Then I use the Spellbinders Falling Leaves embossing folder on the other one. Beautiful texture you get from that. So we'll do the 2 cards at once. Now on the left piece, I'm going to glue a bunch of these small die cuts really close together. So the idea here is number 5, which is to create your own layered background with die cuts. Now you could again do 1 layered die cut thick. These are all 3 stacked, but I'm putting them as close together as possible. You could space them out, but I really feel like a background looks complete if they're nice and snug, not touching each other, but pretty close. If you wanted to, another option would be to create a pattern. Maybe draw some lines and create all the leaves going at the same angle, a pattern on the background. I just wanted to cover it with a lot of leaves. So the idea is to just use small die cuts to create a new background pattern. Now the idea over there on the right is to do a cascade of small die cuts from the top or coming up from the bottom. So that's our 6th idea for using small die cuts. You can also do this with small stamps, and I showed that in a video once a long time ago. I'll link to it in the top right if you want to check it out, how to use small stamps to create this background that kind of cascades down. So I start by putting die cuts bigger and close together at the top. And then as I work my way down, I move on to the smaller die cuts and I space them out more. So it looks like it's kind of falling from the top. Now, once that's dried, I'll take my scissors and cut right along the outside edge, and that will trim off all the extra pieces. Now, I keep those extra pieces because if there are any areas on the edge that look a little blank, I can go glue those in to fill in that space, which I'll show you here. So I saw a couple areas where I wanted more leaf, like up here. So I put a little glue, and I just use one of the leaves I cut off, and then I'll let that dry and trim it again. So even the little pieces you cut off, you can use to fill in those spaces. Okay, now we just need to add some sentiments to these backgrounds. For one of them, I thought I would use the Spellbinders Grateful Sentiment Steps die set. So this has the words thankful, grateful, and blessed, and you can cut them just right from the center of a piece of cardstock or use the little rectangle die that goes with it. And it cuts the letters out, so you can use the individual letters or the little strips, which I plan to use. So I cut out all 3 strips and I trimmed the sides down. Now I have a piece of dark brown cardstock that I'm gluing to the back of each of these so that the dark brown color shows through the white outline. I will do this with all 3 words, and then I glued them towards the top center, kind of stacked. I also glued my background onto a white note card, and I'm adding little acorn accents, just 3 of them, kind of scattered on the background. It was at this point that I realized the text stamping is upside down. Yes, I glued it all upside down. So instead of starting over, I flipped my card over. So now that the text reads right, and I'm just going to rotate each of these words. So instead of my words being up in the top center, they're now in the bottom center. I didn't want to have to redo any of that, so I just made it work as is. So that's a little tip for you. Don't give up if you do something like that. Just make it work. No one will ever know. So I'll just cut the bottom of that card off there, and now I'll glue this panel onto a new note card, and nobody will ever know. So the overall size of this is 4¼ by 5½ inches. The only other thing I added to this was some dark brown gemstones that I put into some of the open areas on the background for a bit of sparkle. So with this idea, I used small die cuts that were layered together, and I put them close together to form a really fun background. Kept the sentiments very simple so that lots of that background could show. Now for the cascading background, I used hello letter die cuts for this. Now this hello is from the Spellbinders Bold Greetings die set. Now there are some weird looking pieces in here because it is for an interactive die set to go with an interactive die set, but I'm only using the word in it. It also has a few other words included. So I die cut the hello from white cardstock, and I glued 3 of each letter together for dimension. Now I have a sticky mat on my work surface, and I have the negative space on the sticky mat. I'm popping each of my layered letters into the openings. No glue on it, the sticky mat is just holding them in place. Now I'm taking a piece of tape and picking up those letters and pulling them off of the sticky mat. By doing that trick, my letters are all straight and evenly spaced. Now keeping those on the tape, I can put adhesive on the back of each of the letters. Then I can pick up the tape and place it right onto my card wherever I want. And it's real easy to see where you're placing them this way too. I'll just leave the tape on there for a few minutes while it dries. And there we're done. I did add a little sentiment strip underneath from a Simon Says Stamp sentiment strip pack. I also added the panel to a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch white note card. I do have 3 little yellow flower die cuts that I scattered around the card, along with a few yellow pearls. So here we're just using small die cuts to create a background that kind of cascades. Okay, on to our next card, and this is a large shaker card. And instead of using little gems and sequins on the inside, I use small die cut pieces. A great way to use those small dies. So for this one, I'm using 3 die sets. First, we have this Oh Christmas Tree die set from Spellbinders. It has an outline and then details that you can add to the tree. Also, it has dies that cut a bunch of little circles and little stars. I'll use the little stars for the inside of the shaker. I'm also using the Spellbinders Chill Bear die set. I've used this in a previous video, and I'll link to it here on the top right. I just used a tiny little snowflake from that one. And then the Spellbinders Holiday Decoration dies. This has a bunch of little ornaments and stars, and there's little ornament toppers, and you can create a fun background that way. I'm just using some snowflake dies from that. I also have some different shades of blue cardstock from Spellbinders that I will die cut for our little shaker bits in the inside. But first, let's do the tree on the front. This is a really cool effect. They actually have a stencil that goes with it too. I cut the outline of the tree and the detail of the tree together from white cardstock. I then just cut the outline of the tree from white glitter cardstock from Simon Says Stamp. So I get a solid glitter tree. And then I glued those together so the glitter kind of peeks through the details. This will go on the front of our shaker window. Okay, now we need to create the walls of our shaker window. I'm going to do this pretty quickly and skip some steps because I want to save time in the video, but I'll link to the top right to a more detailed video on shaker cards. But what I did here is I used 2 rectangle dies, one slightly smaller than the other, and I die cut them together 5 times from white cardstock. Here I have glued 4 of them together, so it's nice and thick, so it's 4 stacked white rectangles. I'm now gluing that onto the front of a note card. I did stamp this note card with the Simon Says Stamp Friendship Text background stamp in white pigment ink. Now my note card is a little bit taller than 5 1/2 here. I will trim it down, and overall to be 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. So right now we have the walls of our shaker card there. It's nice and thick. I put my MISTI on top of that while it dries, and I take the 5th rectangle, and I'm putting double-sided tape on the back of that. Then I have a piece of acetate that I cut to be the same size, and I'm putting that onto the double-sided tape. This acetate could be one that you buy for crafting or a recycled piece of packaging, which is what I use today. So now we have a rectangle on the front and then the acetate clear panel on the back of it. I glued our little tree right to the front of the acetate so it looks like it's floating there. Now we can add all of our little tiny die cut pieces. So I have tiny little snowflakes and stars. There are 4 different sizes of snowflakes, lots of little stars. And these are all from the cardstocks I showed you earlier. I also added just a few iridescent star sequins, not many, maybe just 5 or 6, just for a bit of sparkle. Now right there in the center, I'm putting a piece of foam tape. That will just keep the center of the window from kind of collapsing down when it goes through the mail. And that'll keep the tree kind of floating up and not let that acetate to fall in. All right, so now once I've filled it with all the different pieces that I want, I will put tape on the back edge of our frame here, right up against that acetate. And then I will place this right on top of the open frame on our card. Okay, our last bit here is to use the Spellbinders mini Christmas sentiment strips. These are silver foil on blue cardstock. I used my glimmer machine like I showed you earlier. This was actually one long sentiment, and I cut it into 3 parts so I could stack the sentiment on front of our card. I also added a silver foiled star to the top, and that foil plate is included in that tree die set. All right, so there we have our shaker card. You can see in the inside that we have little die cut shapes floating around instead of just sequins or gems. It's a great way to use those tiny stamps. You could do little hearts, little stars, little circles, little letters, whatever you want, but snowflakes are perfect for this card. I also like the sparkle on the tree because I used white glitter cardstock. It's kind of hard to see in the video, but in real life, it catches the light nicely. Okay, my last example is an idea for using your tiny little die cuts to enhance background patterns. You can do this on background stamped images or die cut backgrounds like I'm doing today. I wanted to use the new Spellbinders Mosaic Bracket Card Builder. I saw this in the store and I had to buy it. I just think it's really cool. You can do this fun little bracket edge, but I'm just going to cut a portion out of this. I die cut that piece from light blue cardstock and then 2 blue cardstock. On the back of the light blue, I put adhesive, and I'm taking one of the blue die cuts and gluing it to the back, but I'm offsetting it a bit, so I'm shifting it up a bit. So when you look closely, you'll see that blue kind of peeking out above the light blue, so you can see it there. Just a fun layered effect. Now, on the back of that, I'm putting more glue, and I'll glue the other blue die cut, but this time I will shift that die cut down a bit. This is just a fun way to use some background dies because it looks like it's a layering die set, but really it's only one die. I decided to glue that to a dark blue panel, and then I just trimmed it into a little border. Then off screen, I glued tiny little flowers into the pattern on this. Now you could do this on a full background die or full background stamp too. I just decided to do a little border. And this idea is to enhance your background panel with little die cuts. So I glued tiny little navy flowers into the pattern and then tiny little blue flowers on top of that with a little white gel pen dot at the center. Now I put white cardstock borders above and below this, and then tiny thin navy cardstock borders along that. I did hot foil with blue foil, the sentiment right above that. So think about it. You can use any of your tiny die cuts to just make your backgrounds look a little more special. Sorry I went through those last ones so quickly, but this video is getting long and I wanted to be sure to share the ideas. So I hope you will break out those tiny die cuts and see what you can come up with creatively on your cards. If you're interested in the supplies I used in this video, you can find them in my YouTube description below, but I do encourage you to go to my blog because I have photos of all of these cards, lots of close-ups, supplies listed there, and you can bookmark videos so you can refer to them in the future. Now at the end here, I have a couple other videos that are related to this one that you might find interesting. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks for watching and for coming back, and we'll see you soon.